I don't know how privileged you are to have this backstage. I feel like we're on a talk show, a late night type talk
Yes.
show.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go back to what I was saying before we got our ears blown out here. So I have literally, with the FAR changes, FAR 2.0, and all of the directors coming from the administration, I've literally had to put kind of my way of doing business on hold to some degree. Because where are we going next? And so when the revisions came out, I read them. I didn't really understand them as much as I would like to. And then was the time to reach out to experts like yourself to find out exactly what those changes meant. And it was very important because in the role that I have, a number of businesses were on the phone with me saying, hey, what's going on? What do you think's going to happen here? And I'm giving my opinion. And of course, my opinion was usually right. But
Always.
sorry about that. But it's just, here we are now. So we have the changes, and now we kind of need help deciphering them. So you all are very versed in all of this. So now let's shoot.
Okay. Yeah, I wish we had the answers, but we don't. But we can tell you where we're at today. And as Shanae has shared with me from her folks over at GSA, it's not day by day, it's hour by hour that the
Yes.
Wow.
changes are happening.
Right.
But I think we need to start at the beginning and level set all of us so that you understand why this is different than ever before. So we've had lots of administration changes, and the new administration comes in, and whatever the last administration's, executive orders, they nullify those and they issue their own, and they put a stop on hiring and a stop on new rules, and then the government then, in 6-7 months gets back to business as usual. Well, there's no business as usual in this administration. So the rulemaking process used to be, and I believe it still is because it's based in law, is that when we change a law, it has to go through the rulemaking process. And the FAR, some of what's in the FAR are statutory, so it has to go through the rulemaking process, which means that the revolutionary FAR overhaul will come out in its entirety to all of you, and there will be a comment period. When the comment period closes, what normally happens is all of the comments are reviewed and addressed in what they call a final rule. Sometimes they do an interim rule, and sometimes they go right to the final rule. And all of your comments are addressed. We are not hearing that this time. Right now, there is an informal feedback period that started. We can't find when it started, but we know it ends on November 3rd.
Wow.
Yes.
So, so the comment period, which they call the final comment period, which I don't even know when the first one was, but anyways, you have until November 3rd to put your comments in. This is for the informal. Once the revolutionary FAR overhaul is in the Federal Register, then that's the official counting down period for comments. The word on the street that I'm hearing is that there will be the limited time allowed in statute for the comment period, limited time, and there will be no extensions.
Yes.
So if you're getting the drift, right, some people might not want to know what you think. Okay, that's my opinion. Doesn't represent who I work for, just my own opinion from doing this for almost 50 years. So now that you know the rulemaking process, now you know where we are right now. So what happens is if an agency or the Department of Defense wants to change something without doing the rulemaking, they do that through a deviation. And then as soon as the deviation is issued, the changes are implemented. So what is happening with the FAR rewrite, if you notice, the deviations are being posted daily onto the acquisition.gov site under the RFO. You will notice the only one that hasn't done their deviation is the Department of Defense. They have not done it yet. Okay? And so Revolutionary FAR Overhaul, or FAR 2.0, or whatever loving term you may have for it. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's where we are in the process, because it is a statutory process. And so once the deviations are out there, then they are in effect. So the agencies that have the deviations in each of the FAR parts, they're already doing the new FAR rewrite.
And they said that from the beginning to start implementing them. So this is a very different process. So even though there is still a comment period, the agencies from the beginning have been directed to start using the new FAR overhaul or so forth. And I'd like to add, just to make sure that the process with the FAR is by the FAR Council. I'm not for sure if you're all familiar with that. The key members of the FAR Council is NASA, DOD, and GSA, right? There is a senior representative from each one of those organizations that work together on the rewrite and the revisions related to that. So that is still happening, except now, in addition to that, OFPP and OMB are taking a more active role in the process. And, just to make sure, like she mentioned regarding the statutory requirements, this new FAR has a regulatory side, and a non-regulatory side, which is meant to make it easier to understand how to use and implement these changes. So each FAR part has a smart accelerator part that has some guides and additional things to help educate and explain the processes. And I would advise you to take some time and look at those. And then there's a FAR companion that goes along with the FAR rewrite that is designed to help you understand, in summary, how each of those revisions work.
So now let's talk about culture for a moment.
Well, time out.
Yep.
Time out. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, when you started, I was just sitting here like a line that Denzel Washington said in Training Day.
Uh-oh.
You know where I'm going with this?
Yes.
Your first statement, tell it to me like I'm in kindergarten.
Okay, so that's what I'm going to tell you about culture.
Uh-oh.
So the culture is this, okay? So you have the deviations, okay, that mandate that the FAR as written isn't followed, but you follow the revolutionary FAR overhaul that's on the acquisition.gov site. So if you go to acquisition.gov, hit the hamburger bar, go to the RFO, which is what they call it, and then you will see the FAR rewrites. You will see, they don't call it the companion, what do they call it now?
The practitioner
The
albums.
practitioner album. And inside that, you will find what they call smart accelerators, which if you're looking in FAR Part 16, which is contract type, you will find a whole bunch of brand new proposed contract types that are meant to accelerate the process. So now that you know where these rules are and that you have to follow them, so let's talk about culture. So you have organizations that haven't implemented all of their deviations. Okay, so now think about this. You're a contractor and you have a customer and you're trying to figure out, is my customer following the deviations? Is my customer not following the deviations? Does my customer even have deviations in place?
Really?
Right?
Wow.
Does my customer know what the hell's going on? Has it been communicated to them? Because, oh, by the way, they're not working because the government is shut down.
Currently shut down.
So, and then, think about what has been happening since then. Workforces have been reduced, some by 40%, right? So your customer who you've created a great relationship with isn't there anymore. So you can't pick up the phone and find out if they're following the deviation, how they're following the deviation. And you have a contract that was, you think canceled, you're not sure. There's no funding, that for sure you know, right? And so the culture is, how are buyers and sellers going to work together to get through this together? Because no one is any better off in this moment, whether you are on the buyer side or the seller side. And Shanae, I'm going to ask you, you work with these customers on both sides. What is the sense of the culture so that these folks know what to expect on the other side of the table?
I think one thing you have to realize, like she pointed out, that there's a lot of transition happening right now. So you have the reduction in force. So you have a lot of new people. You have a lot of people that are what I would prefer to say in leadership development. They have to learn how to lead right now because everyone is gone. So when we say collaborative relationships, mutually beneficial, that is extremely important right now. Because as she stated, we are all pretty much in the same place right now. Everyone's trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
And how do I need to do to complete my task to stay compliant? Also, because funding is an issue, sellers have an obligation to still monitor cost and mitigate, the high expenses related to shutting down or starting back up, right? And whenever a contract is canceled or terminated, whether it's for convenience or default, whatever the reason, the contractor is allowed to submit a termination proposal, right? So there's a termination settlement that goes along with that. Part of the government's negotiation is, look, I know I know the government was shut down. I know I canceled this contract. You still have an obligation to keep costs at a minimum. So there is an additional responsibility as a seller or as a contractor to correctly identify your expenses and your task and what steps you took to keep costs down. If you remember early on when the contracts were canceled and they were looking at them, what did they require of the buyers? Tell us why you need this project. Why is this important?
Right.
Why is your job important? So think about that now on the flip side as a seller, when we're in a government shutdown, now they're saying, okay, tell us how you helped keep costs at a minimum and stay prepared to be able to start working in.
Yeah, the most important thing during this shutdown, and I cannot stress it enough, is for you to document everything.
Everything.
When you worked, when you couldn't work, if you were supposed to be on the base and you couldn't get access to the base, what work were you able to do at your own facility or remotely? Everything must be documented, because when the government reopens and you're going to have to do some kind of a mod, because I'm sure you're going to have to renegotiate schedule, cost, resources. And oh, by the way, the key person that was working on that contract that now, is no longer working because you can't work under the contract said, this isn't for me. I'm going to leave your company.
Right.
I'm going to go do something else. So now you
why
don't
it's
have
something
your
else to
key
do.
personnel, which is why you won the contract. So you've got to just document,
Everything.
and remember that your remedy in the contract is if either party breaks the contract, the other party is owed consideration. It's not a freebie to mess around with the contract from the government side. It's not okay. You go, oh, okay,
Wow.
is you are entitled to cost, as Shanae said. But you don't go and hire the most expensive,
Exactly.
lawyer or the most expensive facility. It's your job because the government will negotiate those costs.
Right.
So that's the culture piece that we all have to be aware of. So let's talk about GSA, the big elephant in the room.
Can I
Yep.
stop you? Because
It's a
say
lot.
So-
these really,
so
you
here's the
say
thing.
this really big
How
thing,
late
right?
can we go?
Let's
Because
just
I don't
wait
have
for-
anywhere to go until
Okay,
Friday.
well, so,
Yep.
do you realize what you just? I mean, like that's amazing. I'm not sure I knew all of that.
Oh, really?
Oh,
I'm not sure that I did. It might
Oh,
be
the
sitting- when's
details,
last time-
probably.
When is the
But
last
you
time
know-
we were in a government shutdown?
but you
and
wanna
we
know
had
Right.
this kind of scenario going on.
that
So
you're
that-
absolutely right.
documenting and all of the challenges and all
And the
that,
cost.
and it is a contract.
It is.
And
Yep.
sometimes I think we as vendors think the government said this, and we don't have any
Yep.
recourse when things like this happen.
Yeah.
You know those
So you
5 billion
really have to-
clauses in the back of your contract?
I
that
know.
remedy in there,
Mm-hmm.
okay? The disputes clause is in there, changes clause, all that's in there for the protection of both parties.
So, but here's the thing. So you mentioned so much. So then, if your contracting officer said, "Hey, look, I'm out," right? You really have to document that because when the new person comes in, whoever's the new POC,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be able to articulate that and go
Right.
through, just like you said, all of the provisions and everything on your contract
Right.
to be able to relay and renegotiate.
And remember,
Wow.
the FAR has a discussion, we're going to get to this, that speaks to adequate documentation. And what does adequate documentation mean? It means anyone that picks up your contract file will be able to read it and know without a doubt what did you do and why did you do it.
Okay.
So that is where adequate documentation, routine, consistent, ongoing documentation resides. Previously in the FAR, there was a very specific list of what needs to go into a contract file.
Okay.
And even though that's changed, you should still keep those. You should still keep those things. And then the termination settlement proposal form, even if you're not using that, you can look at that as a guide because it itemizes by cost what you are allowed for an equitable adjustment
So
for.
this is going to be an interesting new year.
Oh my goodness. Let me tell you, the
Yeah.
lawyers are going to be,
Yes.
driving Lamborghinis
Oh.
and they're going to be having yachts, because all of these rules, particularly the ones that are in FAR Part 19, the SBA has not weighed in on any
Right.
of these yet. So the SBA can say, well, that's what you think.
But
That might not be what we're going to do. So,
This
so,
is going to be an interesting little dance going on.
so let
Yeah.
me tell you, you're going to have enough content for dinner meetings, lunch meetings,
Exactly.
breakfast meetings.
To read on the beach.
Yeah, this
of course, I loved that at lunchtime.
Yep. This is not going to be something that you can say, "Oh, I read the RFO
Yeah.
and I'm out. I'm done. I
Nope.
know it." Because Shanae and I read every
Every
day.
day.
And they just said that they're going to put, because we don't have an NDAA either. So we have a government shutdown and we have no budget. I know that doesn't surprise you because we haven't had a budget and I can't remember when. It's funny, I teach that, in class about the budget process. And some kid will always raise their hand and go, "But don't we not have a budget?" And I'm like, okay, don't wreck my dream. I mean, that's
We have a
reality.
continuing resolution.
Yeah. So now you have to be mindful of, if you have a contract, the government can put a clause in there, a special clause in Section H that says, we don't have any money and that you are performing at your own risk. Should we get an appropriation, then we will pay you. But if we don't, well, thank you for your contribution.
Contribution.
And yet, the government is not able to accept anything for free.
for free.
Right.
That's
So,
right. That's another thing.
I'm not
Right.
sure how that one's going to work.
Okay.
Right. And I would also caution you on this. When you are identifying your cost and your work, don't forget you have clauses that were in place at the time of award, and now you have these new clauses. There are costs related to what you accepted, and then there are costs related to what you must now do with that contract change, right? So you need to price accordingly with what do these new contract clauses, what is this going to cost me to get into compliance?
That's a
Okay.
great
Right?
point.
And
That's-
what
that is
level
a
of
good point.
effort
Right,
do I
yeah.
need to make to come
In
into
order to get to
compliance?
that, right.
Because that's something else that you negotiate. Okay, government, you want me to do this? Well, that's
There's a
new
cost,
to my
right, there's
contract.
something
This
new
is
to
the
it,
cost
right,
for that.
right.
Right?
So I would submit, and I know I'll have people that argue with me, that clauses, new clauses to a contract cannot be added unilaterally to a contract. Because that changes what both parties agreed to
Changes
when
the
they
whole
signed the
scope of
deal.
What you originally signed
Exactly.
So
up
they
for.
have to
Okay.
do them bilaterally,
Yes.
which means you have to agree to them and you get to submit your claim for equitable adjustment, right? And then it's a negotiation between the government and your company on what you will include and what it will cost the government, or if there's any decrease in cost, if they're
Right, you
taking
have to do
some
that.
things out, then there's the decrease in cost. Again, just remember what a contract is. Both parties sign up, they agree, and when one party breaks the deal, the other party is owed consideration. And we did that early on when we took out the DE&I stuff out of all the contracts, and or if there was a contract for that, and you got an
Or segregated
email from
facilities.
the
Whatever the- right,
contracting
yeah,
officer
right,
that said
yeah.
your contract's canceled. Well, you can't do that. They have to terminate you for convenience. And as soon
And
as
that
they
costs money.
terminate you for
Right.
convenience, you open up a job order, you hire a termination attorney, and you start accumulating those costs.
Or even consultants. So when it comes to terminations, and I'm not just saying that because but when it comes to
But she is a
terminations,
consultant.
when it comes to terminations, you are allowed to be paid for the experts that you had to hire to help you prepare that.
Okay.
That is
Okay.
a legitimate cost. And this is also why documentation is extremely important. When you are making these decisions, you need to document the rationale behind that. That becomes part of your defense for your position, because even though you're entitled to it, it has to be fair and reasonable.
Yep.
Right?
All right, so can
Wow.
we talk about something new? Because
So
time's
we're gonna
running.
go-
Oh,
we're
we
going-
got 15
we're-
minutes.
We're going to GSA, aren't we?
Well, we are going to talk about first the rule of two, because everyone
That's
was
a big-
they were
Yes.
declaring victory, like we won.
But
But what you don't,
Rule
what
two.
folks aren't looking, because you got to look at the FAR in total. And so what happens is the rule of two is in place. However, huge discretion has been given to government contracting officers. They may, and they don't have to go and get permission. They can say, well, we don't think that there's robust competition enough that we found two or more service disabled, veteran-owned small business,
Right.
women-owned small business,
Right,
hub-zone
yeah.
small business. And so we are going to go full and open, end of story.
right.
So you need to be aware of this new discretion that contracting officers have, just like new contract types. They come up with some really cool, crazy contract type. They don't have to go get permission. In the old days, in the Department of Defense, you had to go to John
through a whole-
Tenaglia,
Right, a long
and you used to
list.
get a deviation, a single deviation to do this weird contract type. Now you just say, oh, this is fun, and document your file and rock on. And why is that fair? Because you, as industry, can say no, thank you. Okay, you're not committed to do anything that you don't want to do. You may just not be, you'll be shut out of that contract if that's a contract type that you don't like, right? And so this rule of two is in place, yay, they didn't change it, but they gave huge discretion to contracting officers to make decisions. So I'm going to be a pessimist, and I'm going to say this. When one person has the authority to make the decision, they are in a really vulnerable position where they can be coerced by higher level folks. I'll say that. And so if a program office doesn't want to set it aside for small business, and they know people in high places, then they will perhaps put undue pressure on the contracting officer to not set it aside. And that's why, I mean, so good discretion of the contracting officer is good. You know, they get to make the decision, but we have to make sure that the decision is a good one based on good market research and documented, right, Shanae?
Right.
Okay, and coerce means strongly suggest.
Yeah.
So one other thing. So in any of these changes, and we need to get to GSA, that's true.
We're
In
going.
any of these changes, do you see anything good or advantageous for small business?
Oh, I think there's opportunity always for creative, smart, agile companies.
Or which
And-
small businesses are?
Yes,
Right.
and this one I told you about of the T1 RJS joint venture for border expansion. So one company, Tribal One, and another company, RJS Construction, they joined a joint venture to merge their talents together and win that contract. So there's lots of opportunity. It's just not what you have been used to.
Right.
You're
Okay.
just you're gonna
Okay.
have to be uncomfortable being uncomfortable. And you know, when we get to GSA now, as Shanae's gonna tell you, you know, is it a good idea to have a GSA contract? Yes. Are you on a list to get your GSA contract? She was telling me, if you are applying for a new GSA schedule, you're at the bottom of the
Of the
list.
list
Tell
now,
them
right.
It's a long list.
who's first.
And I wanted to add to that, relationship building right now is really, really
Crucial.
important. Relationships with the contracting officers, the program management, partners. You need to already have your partners identified. You don't want to be trying to find them when an
Right.
opportunity comes out. Staying as far ahead of the opportunity as you can. Look at the agency forecast. Look at GSA acquisition hallway, where they even show you forecasts. You should be identifying trends in buying habits and needs so that you can be prepared for what's coming out with your teaming members and say, hey, and then I want to caution you on this, because they have discussions about the set aside. Just because it was a set aside before, they don't have to keep it a set aside.
Oh, wow.
Right? Even if
Okay.
it was a sole source, if there's follow-on, they don't have to keep it as
Even if it was 8A.
8A. They don't have
They
to
don't
do
have to
that
do that.
anymore.
Okay.
So you really do need to identify teaming partners under each small business
Business group.
category
Okay.
and how you together will work
Right.
together to have a complete solution. And then if you are, you need a contract vehicle. I want to make sure to say that, because a lot of people are still saying, oh, you need to identify, do I need one? Does it fit? Look, if procurement is centralized to GSA for most of the commercial buying of products and services, what do you think you need to do? Right? If it's not on a GSA schedule, it's going to more than likely be on some other government contract
GWAC.
vehicle. It even says that in the Revolutionary FAR. That is the choice, right? They want firm fixed price contracts and preference for the vehicles. And why is that? Because those vendors have been pre-qualified and their pricing has been pre-approved at a discount. And GSA right now, remember, they've lost a lot of staff. So the staff that they have a very large workload. I speak to them regularly. They say it is not day by day, it is hour by hour. They are constantly changing. And remember, there is a queue for GSA, right? So they have new offerers of people that want to obtain a schedule. But the other part of that is they have to manage who's already on schedule. That takes precedence over new offerers.
Okay.
So the priority of work is GSA schedule holders that are in their option renewal period. Then they work on GSA schedule holders that need a modification. Then they look at new offers. Now, how far in the queue do you
You're
think
way
you
down
are?
at the bottom by that point.
Right. And
Yep.
then, oh, by the way, if GSA has decided they want to audit your GSA schedule
Ooh.
contract, that
Wow.
takes precedence. So you're down
goes
here at the
up.
bottom
Okay.
of a lot of things. So if you feel you're not ready for a schedule, that's one thing, because I always advise people to see where you are. But that's something else you can look for in a partner. Do they have a GSA
right,
schedule?
teaming
Can you
with
partner
them.
and team with them until you get your own, or to use that to build up your pricing
Okay.
and your past performance? And then don't forget, if you If you decide to form a JV, which is a separate legal entity with an organization, and they have a GSA schedule, guess what? You can have a JV GSA schedule, even if you don't have your own GSA schedule. So you just really need to think and strategize. So when we say creative, that's what we're talking about.
And just because you have a schedule doesn't mean the money's,
No,
you're in the money. You're not in the money until
Oh, no,
you get
you're
an
not.
order.
No, that's true.
you
That's
just get
true.
to play.
Yeah, you get dealt a hand, but it
Right.
might not be a winning hand.
And everyone's going to use it now. And I want and caution you on this. GSA is also right sizing. What does right sizing mean? If you have a GSA schedule and you're not making sales, they can
That's what I was
kick
gonna
you off.
ask you.
Okay.
They can't.
The
they are-
requirement is
okay.
that for new schedule holders, you get at least $25,000 in sales within the first 2 years, right? And then within 5 years, you should have had maybe about
Enough to-
$100,000. And it used to be that if you did not obtain those sales goals, you would say, hey, you'd say, I couldn't do it, I tried. And they say, okay, we're going to give you a little more time to work around it. Now, that may not be the case. So you really need to, just like you should anyway, you should be identifying and tracking every effort you make to generate sales and working toward a specific plan on how you're trying to obtain those, because you want to keep your schedule and your work when you get them.
And you probably spent over $25,000 in salary getting that GSA contract in place. So I would hope that your goal would be more than 25,000.
It's a lot of work.
Okay.
Question.
Real burning question. Soup.
Yes. NASA soup.
Right. It's rolled. It's going to be rolled up within GSA.
Well, the goal
This
is that
okay.
the main schedules, those like NASA and so forth, they
Right.
would still be managing that, and then there will be some shared work overall that GSA would be assisting with. But that's going to take some time
Right.
because right now they have to take time to understand exactly how that contract vehicle
Okay.
works
What
and
about
what's
Soup
involved.
6? What about the ones that have, if you've, that was my question.
Right. The next ones.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it really depends on the schedule and how this review and consolidation is going to work. And it's still in the planning stages.
So we're,
Right.
we're literally, if I can say this, we're literally in uncharted waters without a compass.
Well, I wouldn't say without a compass.
It's
We have the
broken.
compass. We just, we don't have
Right,
true
it's not a
north.
true
Thank
north.
you. Yeah. Someone said, well, do I think that there are good things in this? You know, having done this for 50 years, and Shanae, I would like to say she's done it for 10, but she's done it for 40 years as well. And so together, almost 100 years of experience, we've seen some things in the government that aren't efficient. Yes, would you
We all
agree?
have. We all have.
Yeah, right. No, and so, think about GSA was put in place back when the war effort, back in the old days, and was funded, that received funding to support the war, right? And so GSA was born to be the buying arm of the government.
Yes.
Back in the day, and we're the pendulum is swinging back here. Now, there are certain programs that the expertise and the complexity is not what GSA has. So Department of Defense
Right.
says, hell no, you're not getting these programs. And NASA says, hell no, you're not getting
Right.
these
Right.
programs. But you can have the one for cell phones, and you can have the one for paper and
Right.
things, And I'm being facetious. There are a lot of really talented people at GSA. And not only that, the contracting officers that have lost their positions in the other agencies, are finding their way over to GSA.
Right.
And so
Right.
it's just going to be bumpy. So keep your seatbelts on because we're all learning,
Okay.
And be adaptable, right? And remember, nobody wants to do a bad job. So everyone is really working hard to try to get things done, and in an ethical way and have a good solution. So but it is really going to be a lot of changes. So just be prepared. Like she said, every day, the first part of the day, we are reading constantly looking at everything just to make sure we understand what's going on and how it's changing. And remember, here's the unique thing about GSA. They have always had a federal acquisition side.
Right.
Always. That's not new. So, originally people were like, oh my God, GSA doesn't know what to do. Yes, they do. Right? They've always handled federal acquisitions, right? It was just a choice that agencies were allowed to make. Do I want to handle my own acquisition, or am I going to let GSA do it? Now now we have some things that are now required from a more common buying practice.
Right.
And they need more staff, as she said, to do that. So the ideal is that some of the staff from the other agencies will want to now come and work and do that for GSA. And because of that, there will be some shared knowledge in that regard from these other
And remember,
agencies.
once the contracts are written, they go back to the program office where they came from. So you can be the link, the connection, because you can follow that contract, from their office where it used to be awarded, right, over to GSA, and then it will come back to you again for execution of the contract. So your role in helping GSA be successful would be very advantageous to the warfighter, the American citizen, whoever your customer is that you're supporting. But I do want to tell you about this because it's very important to me, how a weak password can change your whole company. So if you don't think, because, listen, you could guess my password in a minute if you knew my dog's name.
Don't tell them. Don't tell them.
No. I'm going to change it when I go home or get a new dog. Yeah. So this company, KNP Logistics Group, was in business for 158 years, okay? And so this bad actor, Akira Group, guessed an employee's weak password. So an employee working for the company. And so, and they didn't have that multi-factor authentication. So they guessed the password, and once inside, they deployed the ransomware payload, right, across the company's digital infrastructure. And not only that, it destroyed their backups, their disaster recovery system, and the company had no path to recover without paying the ransom, and they wanted $5 million. And so after 158 years of being in business, the company closed their doors because one person didn't have a strong password, okay? So the data is this: 82% of the ransomware attacks were against companies with fewer than 1,000 people.
Yep.
So you're all vulnerable, right? I was one of the OPM folks that got hacked.
Me too.
Yeah. So what happened is they went into an HR system at a second or third tier sub. That's how the Chinese infiltrated into that and was able to disrupt the entire government.
Yep.
Small businesses received the highest rate of targeted malicious emails. Employees of small business experienced 350% more social engineering attacks. And Shanae was telling me it's the ones where they have the embedded links.
Yes.
That you
Do
hit
not
the
click
link.
on an email
That
link.
you don't know.
Right. Even because I spoke with the DoD person, I did have a situation where a client, that's how they got in, from an email phishing link, and you have to report it and disclose. So I was speaking to them. I said, hey, can you, just out of curiosity, do you have a lot of high security issues? What happens? He said, actually, we don't have a lot of major threats that are reported. He said most of the time it's a phishing problem. Someone has clicked on a link in their email. So be very careful with your emails. I look at where the email is from. So to make sure that it's a valid email, because they're getting really good.
At the way.
Like they'll get everything right except usually right at the very end. Instead of being instead of being .gov, it's ABC something weird. But just be careful. And then if there's a link, I will call the organization and say, hey, did you send? I still always check.
Still
But like she said, that multi-authentic
Authentication, yeah.
that is really important. Wherever you can do that, and that's why we're here with CMMC and these basic levels. The government says what they want to know in simple terms is, can you protect the data in use, at rest, and during transmission. That's what they want to know. So that's why CMMC is about your desktop, your phones, your laptops,
Yep.
your network server, right? That's in use, during transmission, and at rest.
Yep.
What is happening? How is your data protected?
And that's why if you do not tell the truth on your SPURS reports and you get caught, it's a False Claims Act.
Like
And
Georgia
it's
Tech.
Like Georgia Tech's. And how much did they have to pay
$875,000.
in penalties?
And state also. And state had a big.
Oh,
Penn State
yes.
too. Yep. So this whole security stuff, passwords,
It's real.
cyber,
It's real,
CMMC, it really should not be taken lightly. So we are over time, but I would love to hear if any of you have any questions. Yes.
How does FAR 2.0 intersect with, we do a lot of DoD work
Mhm.
using OTAs.
DOW.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, man. How does FAR 2.0 intersect with that? activity?
So remember, OTAs or
Sure.
OT authority is outside the
Outside.
FAR.
Other transactions.
So the executive order, I don't remember the number, said go commercial.
Yeah.
CSOs, let's do it.
You're good to go.
Yep.
Right.
So the FAR
The-
gods are not trying to limit
Oh,
the cost of
no.
activity.
Oh,
No,
no,
that's where
no,
they're trying to give the
Non-traditional.
most flexibility to.
Non-traditional, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Good to know.
And
Yeah.
remember too that they have not come out with their version of how they're going to handle acquisition yet, and that's been spoken several times. We're coming out from that department. We're coming out with our own way in which we think we need to handle acquisition because we're special. So it's whenever I can't wait to read it. It's going to look different from what you even see in the RFO right now, and be prepared for that. But it's definitely going to include CMMC, right? There's some things for sure you will definitely see. What I've also seen is I've seen where there have been member groups that had to meet a certain technical requirement or capabilities just to be able to submit a technical briefing, and then they have to go in for oral presentations. So I'm also expecting with when it comes to our military acquisition that you're going to see more OTAs. I expect you're going to see more technical briefings and oral
Yep.
presentations as well.
Yep.
And be prepared for that.
And just remember that the mainstream Department of War have not been trained in other transactions.
Right.
It
That's
is
correct.
not
Right.
part of their
Yeah.
training. They are FAR-based trained, and they have the option to take a course on OTs.
An option.
Yep. And so they need to have lots of experience with them. And so they will be learning along with you. What I ask you to do is don't let them cheat and don't let them put in FAR clauses and just take the title and the number off.
And it's still a FAR
Cut and
contract.
paste. Cut and
Right.
paste, right, yeah.
Because you want to craft a deal, an OT that makes the most sense for both parties. The government doesn't need your IP to be able
That's
to,
right. And that's what I
they
said,
don't
yes.
need, all that stuff to be able to solve their mission, right? And so stick up for your IP.
Yes. Definitely protect.
Ask for milestone payments based on progress. Do things that make sense for both parties to be comfortable.
The deliverables for us can oftentimes consist of a report,
Of a what?
Report
Okay.
which could be
something to,
Yeah, you need to be
Something
specific.
tangible.
them, being
Yep.
in a happy place.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and
Milestone
Just
don't
be
do-
specific about what's going to be in your report, right? Because to a degree, not too specific. Because remember, whenever you have a claim or a dispute, there has to be something in that contract that you have that aligned with, or else how do you have a claim, right? It's about terms and conditions. So you need to make sure that
Yep.
there's something in there that you can stick the teeth to and say, hey, this is what this was supposed to happen per section 3 point whatever, and it did not. Right? So just make sure that there is still something in there that aligns with the strategy that you've proposed. When it comes to IT, I've seen so many different things. Like, for example, one of the newer things that I saw in the last few years were, say you were working with the government for software development or something, and you were jointly doing it. I've seen them actually have an IT escrow account, separate agreement, where at periodic times you're putting your source code in there, so that if a dispute were to arise or something else were to happen, you would at least have that code there that's readily available. So when you're working through things like that, all of that needs to be protected and managed. So there are different things to think about, especially when it comes to IT. They're looking at not just software as a service, but just all other different things that they're utilizing right now. If you're going to have, like, they're still looking at, of course, we've still got IoT, Internet of Things, right? If it's integrating or interoperable with some other system, how does that all work? And so you need to take all of that into consideration, even with the OTA.
Yeah. And you get to craft it.
That's
There's
the fun
no
part.
set of rules. That's the good and the bad news. You get a
When you start
blank.
commerciality, it makes life simple.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, that is
absolutely.
right.
More questions. You are a small but mighty group. Yes.
I actually don't have a question. I wanted to share like one of my favorite passwords.
Oh my goodness.
That's something. It was suggested to like use a song and use like the first letter of the song, but only you know the song. So like Happy Birthday would be like HBTY would be the password. You would sing in your head. Happy
Oh,
Birthday
that's
to you.
good.
Or a phrase, like some sort of phrase or like a quote.
He's like,
you know?
darn it, you got one.
No, you're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Combo in my luggage.
Thank you for that.
His luggage.
So we're going to have to wrap up. One other thing I think that was really good about this, and thank you everybody, by the way, but what you said in the beginning when our viewers watched this,
Oh, Lord.
but you gave an ABC scenario about how to start this process and what should, so viewers will be able to go to that. And so I just really thank you both for all of the insight as we go on this turbulent flight.
Well, we could do a virtual,
We can,
next time,
right,
do an
yeah.
update of
And
what we're finding,
We'd love to have you all back.
Right, lessons learned.
Probably, next year sometime when we kind of sit in the seat a little bit and we've gone through one
Sure.
flight.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it. And the end.